Have you ever been at that place in your marriage where everything seems to get under your skin? Like everything they say, everything your partner says to you just like frustrates you and irritates you. Maybe they point out some quirk that you have, or they point out some mistake that you made. You didn't load the dishwasher right, or what you said wasn't funny, or whatever it was. They just feel like you're being picked on. Okay. It's not fun. It feels awful. It's easy for us to become overly sensitive to what our spouse says. And we all know what it's like. But today we're going to talk about one of the most important things that you can do to help your marriage make it over the long haul is you got to learn to laugh at yourself. You got to not take yourself so seriously. And look, if you don't learn to laugh at yourself naturally, other people are guaranteed to teach you how to laugh at yourself. So you don't want to miss this. This could really help your marriage and really help you make it over the long haul. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tom, and today we're going to talk about how learning to laugh at yourself can actually make your marriage a whole lot easier. And I know it's not easy to sometimes laugh at yourself. We tend to take ourselves very seriously, maybe a little bit too seriously. And relationships can at times be tough. Even the best marriages, the best connections, we're not always going to agree. We're not always going to see everything the same way. And even the best relationships are going to be filled with ups and downs, and even moments of frustration, moments where you just get irritated, where you just don't want to have these conversations anymore. But there's one thing that can immunize your marriage against a lot of the daily frustrations and from taking things too seriously is learning to laugh at yourself. Learning to laugh at yourself and having a good sense of humor, especially when it comes to difficult times or difficult conversations, can definitely improve your marriage. Today, we're going to dive into why this is so important that we learn to laugh at ourselves, how it can improve our marriage and all of our other relationships as well. We're going to look at 3 practical ways to start laughing at yourself a little bit more. And trust me, your marriage is about to get a lot better. The first step we have to take is we have to embrace our imperfections. All of us can be a little goofy at times. None of us are perfect, no matter how hard we try, and we all have some annoying habits or quirks or flaws or just things about us that get on people's nerves. I know I've got a lot of them, and nobody knows you better than your mate. Nobody knows you better than your spouse, and they see all of your flaws, maybe better than anybody else. So sometimes if we're not careful, this tendency to want to be perfect or to never do anything wrong or never make any mistakes, it can get in the way of us having a healthy relationship. So the first step to laughing at yourself is learning to embrace those imperfections, learning to accept that you make mistakes and you don't always get everything right. And there's just some things about you that are weird. There's some things about you that are annoying. And here's the thing, when you can laugh at these things, when you can realize these things are true about yourself and not take yourself so seriously, the power those mistakes have over you starts to be diminished. Instead of letting them create tension and conflict and problems when they are pointed out, you can create a more lighthearted environment where both you and your partner feel more safe to be yourselves. So learn to accept your imperfections. The second step we need to be mindful of is we need to learn how to diffuse tension with humor. Learning to laugh at yourself creates a positive environment where humor becomes the norm. Now, I'm not saying that if somebody's being awful to you, rude to you, and terrible to you, that you should just pretend like nothing's happening. But I think in most marriages, there's going to be some conflict, there's going to be some challenges, and when somebody points out something about you that's annoying, rather than getting angry and upset and being frustrated all day, What if you could turn it around with a little bit of a sense of humor and laugh at yourself? You see, if that could happen, then you would be done with this moment right now rather than carrying it with you, the resentment and the bitterness all day long, ruining your day and possibly threatening the health of your relationship. So think about a time when maybe a small comment was made toward you that didn't feel so good. And instead of it spiraling into a big argument and everybody being upset and going to their corners and everybody being defensive, what if instead you could maybe laugh it off? Maybe even turn it into a funny moment. The power of humor to diffuse tension is amazing. It works. It's powerful. Okay. For example, a wife one time said something derogatory about her husband because he talks a lot. And she just said, "Oh my gosh, you never stop talking." Okay, now that's rude. You shouldn't say that, right? It's kind of rude to say that. But instead of getting upset, what he did was he kind of slapped himself in the head and he says, "I never know when to shut up." And he laughed, and then she laughed, and everybody else in the room laughed. Now, it may not seem like a big deal, but laughing at yourself gives permission to lighten the mood, and everybody else begins to laugh. And the whole environment begins to change when you can laugh at yourself and not take yourself so seriously. Love is not easily offended. And one of the ways to work on this is by learning to laugh at yourself. And maybe, just maybe, instead of the moment turning into conflict, which is what would normally be the pattern, the moment could become a moment of connection instead. The third thing we want to notice is that when you can laugh at yourself, you create a more safe environment for your relationship. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is when you can laugh at yourself, you make your partner feel more secure. If they always have to walk on eggshells all the time because they're afraid of hurting your feelings, they're afraid of upsetting you, they don't want to poke the bear because they're afraid of what kind of reaction they might get out of you, it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel secure. It doesn't feel like there's any harmony. This freedom allows your relationship to deepen and grow in ways that it couldn't grow before. It simply wouldn't be possible if everybody's constantly afraid that you're going to go on the defensive. And here's the cool thing. When you start to laugh at yourself, you kind of teach your partner, you teach your spouse that it's okay for them to begin to laugh at themselves as well. And sometimes this creates a dynamic in the relationship where neither one of us take ourselves so seriously that we can't see the humor in our own behaviors. And this becomes a two-way street where now both of us benefit in this relationship. Both of us now feel safe enough to be ourselves in the relationship without upsetting all the time the other person. It's really hard to get close to somebody who's angry at you all the time. It's really hard to get close to somebody who's bothered with you all the time. And when you laugh at yourself, you give permission for others to laugh at themselves as well. Even our mistakes and our flaws don't seem so overwhelming. And now we can have a relationship without so much fear of criticism and judgment. It becomes a lot safer, a lot happier, and all of this is because of a sense of humor. Now, what am I saying here? I get it. Laughing at yourself is not always easy to do. It's not necessarily your first response. But here's my challenge for you. The next time your spouse or somebody you love and care about says something derogatory about you, and maybe they point out a mistake or they point out some kind of personality quirk or characteristic about you that doesn't feel very flattering. Now, notice how you feel in that moment. It's very easy for it to hurt your feelings. It's very easy for you and natural for you to become defensive, to maybe go on the attack yourself. But instead of doing that, try to be mindful in that moment. And instead of letting yourself have that natural reaction, decide to laugh it off instead. Decide to just kind of hit yourself in the forehead and say, none of us are perfect. All of us have our mistakes. All of us have our problems. And rather than letting this upset me, I'm going to feel a lot lighter and a lot more free in this moment. And take a deep breath, smile, and maybe laugh it off. Don't give so much attention to that comment this time like you normally would. And by doing this, you're not just brushing off a comment, you're actually protecting your relationship from unnecessary conflict. This simple act of using humor to lighten the moment can transform your relationship. It can transform the context of your marriage with your partner, making your relationship more resilient and more loving and a whole lot more fun. Again, I want to say that if somebody's being awful to you and cruel to you all the time, then you need to recognize that. I'm not talking about that kind of relationship where somebody's just maybe like a narcissist and they're just brutal and abusing you with their words. Nobody should have to put up with that. I'm talking about in a normal, healthy relationship where you know you love each other, you know you care about each other, but somebody you know, just isn't careful with their words. And there's a time when you ought to stop and maybe talk about this and communicate it, but there's a whole lot of times when you should just not give any attention to it, not be so serious, show a lot of benign neglect and laugh at how ridiculous we are sometimes in our marriages, how ridiculous we are and how sensitive we are. By doing these things, we can soften and create a more pleasant environment in which to live and which to operate as a married couple. If you found this video helpful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, put in your comments below how you're learning to have a better marriage. Maybe something you say could inspire or encourage somebody else. Check out this playlist for more great information and this video I'm recommending to you if you want to keep growing. And all of us should want to have the best marriages possible because so much of our life is affected by our dominant relationships like our marriage. Thank you guys, and as always, be present to life. I'll see you next time.